Nate Williams here talking with you today. It's me, myself, and I here on the Dangerous Faith podcast. And what are we talking about today? We're talking about the fact that not all who are friendly are friends. And we want to talk a little bit about biblical worldview and what that means. So if you are like me and you are a conservative Christian, what does that mean? Well, if you're a conservative Christian, it means you are trying to conserve or preserve the principles upon which God made the world. I talked about this a little bit earlier in my church on Sunday. It's something called natural law. God made the world to function a certain way. And what you're trying to conserve is that design. The example I used earlier and what I'll use here is marriage. Yes, the Bible says marriage is between one man and one woman. That's outlined in Genesis and Matthew, the words of Jesus in Matthew. However, marriage was put into the design of the world even before the Bible was written, before it was put together. So, for example, the male and female body goes well together and produces children that allows for the continuation of society. That is a natural law principle. It's the way God made the world. And so as conservative Christians, as biblical Christians, we are trying to protect that because that is God's design. Another part of God's design that is good and we need to protect it, well, let's see, life. So I am pro-life because, one, the Bible is pro-life. You read about how special we are in the Psalms. We are made by God in the womb. Also, you look at Jeremiah verses there, and then in Luke where the Bible talks about life in the womb being a baby, same as a born baby, the same words used. But anyways, I am pro-life. Yes, the Bible is pro-life, but also it is written in the basic principles upon which God made the world. To be pro-life is to be preserving the way God designed the world. And so if you go and kill your next generation, you go and kill your children, your society won't flourish. A modern day example is the country of China. For so long, they had that, I guess it was a one-child policy, and they did not value little girls, baby girls. And so now their population is suffering greatly, their population numbers, because of that policy. And so, again, as a conservative Christian, I want to preserve natural law. God made us to produce children to allow society to continue and flourish. Therefore, I'm pro-life because the Bible is, but also that's what natural law dictates as well. And that's what I'm trying to conserve. However, natural law conservatism is not the only type that's out there. Not all who are friendly are friends. So something we want to keep in mind, I'm going to talk about 3 types of conservatism you'll see and why they are not ultimately in the long run allies with biblical conservatism, biblical Christianity. Let's talk about Islam, or specifically radical Islam. Radical Islam will have, seek to practice Sharia law, where, it's strict rule according to traditional interpretations of the Quran. So very harsh on crime. Women have very few freedoms, can't go to school, have to wear certain clothing, etc. And so conservative Christians might look at some elements of that, and obviously we're going to disagree, but there are other issues that we might agree on. Various aspects of sexuality. We might agree on transgender ideology. We might agree on the fact that the West, from a sexual perspective, is very, let's just say, loose and promiscuous. And so on certain things, the Muslim and the Christian will seem to be like, oh, look, we believe the same thing. It's the same type of conservatism. Look at that. However, we have to remember that ultimately, in the long run, looking at the broader worldview, Christianity and Islam is not compatible. And so I'll get to the two other types of conservatism in a moment. I'm going to move on to red pill conservatism and just knee-jerk reactionary types like Lily Gaddis in a moment. But anyways, returning to Islam. Islam's, again, promotes Sharia law, and there are different types of interpretations of Sharia law, but the strictest one, ultimately, non-Muslims are secondary humans, secondary citizens of a Muslim nation, and that's shown historically, lesser humans, if you will, than those who practice Islam. You contrast that with Christianity, where ultimately, yes, we all want to promote the gospel, share the gospel, but non-Christians are to be treated well with respect because they're made in the image of God. That's part of, again, conservative natural law. Humans are special. We're made in the image of God, and that is something to be preserved and protected. So we protect the unborn, we protect the disabled, the elderly, etc., because all are made in the image of God. That does not exist in Islam because their God, Allah, or Allah, I guess is the Western pronunciation, their God is completely unlike humans. So, for example, the fact that God would become man is kind of, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that's blasphemous. The concept of Jesus being truly God, truly man is ridiculous to Muslims in their theology. And so the image of God stuff doesn't apply. So you have Muslims who follow the will of Allah, and then you have non-Muslims, and then they're allowed to, in jihadi warfare, depending on jihad, I believe means struggle, so it has a fighting connotation, but also a personal piety connotation as well. So it doesn't have to mean war, but it can. But their struggle is against non-believers, and they are allowed to, do whatever it takes, depending on the type of Islam. Do whatever it takes to convert. And so, again, Islam, the radical version of Islam, is not a friend to biblical conservative Christianity. And I remember, so we are tempted, Muslims are tempted to make their move into the West, into America, by way of conservatism, because there are certain bridges that they cross that's like, oh, hey, we believe the same thing. But ultimately, if history is our guide, they have a doctrine called taqiyya, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And basically it allows for subversive practices. Looking at a Britannica article, basically what it says is you are able to do what you need to until you are in a position of power, and then you can make your move to establish power in the name of Islam. And so right now in the West, you look at Europe and America, Muslims are not in power. And so they can't do certain things. But under this doctrine of taqiyya, they're allowed to be subversive. They're allowed to manipulate, lie, wait for greater numbers, and do what they need to do in order to eventually gain power. And so, let's see. Just from the article, I'm trying to find it now. But going down, here's the example. Muhammad's son-in-law followed Muhammad's advice to stay away from fighting until he had the support of 40 men, and then he could go into battle because he was okay. There's a hadith in Islam that goes to Muhammad where it says that he waited 13 years until he could gain a sufficient number of loyal supporters before combating his powerful enemies in Mecca. So anyways, just some examples from Britannica.com of taqiyya being implemented. Muslims in the West are gaining in number, and they're going to be subversive. They're allowed to do that, to manipulate their position until they can make their move for power. And so taqiyya is an interesting doctrine. I would encourage you to go check it out. And subversion is the word that keeps coming back to me. So conservative biblical Christian, fundamentalist Islam is not your ally. You might agree on certain stuff in the culture wars, sexuality, LGBTQ, whatever, all that stuff. But ultimately, the Muslims will use you as a useful idiot. They will use conservatism as a useful vehicle and then discard you once they're able to implement Sharia law. That is their ultimate goal. If you don't believe me, go check out historical examples. Islam and Christianity had a lot of battles for 1,000 years, roughly from 700 to 1700. Before Christianity grew stronger, Islam grew weaker. Anyways, history there. Go check it out. But okay, that is one ideology that's friendly, that is not your friend. And so let's move on to the next. The next one is red pill, manosphere, Andrew Tate, bro type stuff. And again, there will be certain things that the conservative Christian will agree with. So for example, working hard. Andrew Tate, red pill bros will encourage you to work hard for your stuff. Work hard, make that money, provide for your family, stuff like that. Okay, that's good. However, actually, I'll just keep going with a couple other examples. They'll talk about, there's one influencer online, her name is Pearl. I think a lot of her stuff is garbage, but that's a side note. She'll talk about how unfair the court system is towards men and husbands, divorce court, custody battles, how they're often skewed against men. I'll agree with those things. I will. However, even if you might agree with the random stance in this red pill world, ultimately, the worldview underneath it is toxic and unbiblical. So, for example, red pill will talk about, hey, don't get married to one woman because she's going to hold you down. Well, we know in Christianity, marriage is a good thing, and it's good to be faithful to your wife for your life, and a red pill would laugh at that. Another aspect is a red pill would encourage men to sleep with a lot of women and have a lot of children. Red pill also, there are many in the red pill movement who are Muslim. You get into polygamy, you get into polyamory. So basically, Andrew Tate will sleep with a bunch of women, have a lot of children, and but he's not tied down to any one person. And so that's the lifestyle they encourage. And that's just sexual, lust, promiscuity, that just all that is designed to do is you're living for pleasure. That's a version of hedonism. Hedonism, again, is a pleasure worldview. So anyways, you look at that, and then it's a battle of the sexes. Red pill versus feminists, where men and women hate each other, that you're trying to gain an advantage over the other person, you degrade one another, you use one another, men and women fight and battle. You see that in dating type conversations. In fact, that's what we talked about in our last podcast episode. I'd go and check that out. But anyways, red pill conservatism, it is not healthy. It is not good. You might agree with the one-off stance here and there, but the underlying worldview is very, very unbiblical. It is, I guess, the definition of just bitter masculinity. It's not how God designed us to operate. We're supposed to take care of one another, to love and serve and really cherish one another. Men and women complement each other. And it's really a beautiful thing when done well. And the red pill movement will have none of that. You use women to get what you want, and that's all they're good for. So again, not all who are friendly are friends. Mark and avoid. Not good. Then finally, the last type of conservatism I'll mention is just knee-jerk reactionaries. And the example I use is someone who's unfortunately become popular on the conservative side. She's been on different podcasts and basically is a conservative grifter. Her name is Lily Gaddis. And basically what she did was she went online and she just had an unhinged rant using the N-word, and then that blew up. She got fired from her job. And then, basically because of some basic conservative thing she said, unfortunately on the political conservative side, she then became a star. And I hate it. I think that's so dumb of us to just give her attention. It's like, oh, okay, you say something racist and some basic conservative things, and then you're a star? Is that all it takes? So she'll show up in advertisements in a bikini and advertise for right-wing beer and all that stupid stuff. Now, it's just so annoying. She's a conservative right-wing grifter. But basically, she just said some basic things about, Fauci and COVID, some basic things about Biden, F this and F that, very vulgar, very, very vulgar, and explicit and ugly and bitter. And through just a few of her videos, she just became so popular. And it made me mad because there was no cohesive, good, whole worldview. She was just spouting off basic things that conservatives like to hear, and we fell for it hook, line, and sinker, along with the natural outrage that came with saying the N-word. Again, just ugly, ugly stuff. And so she became a star on the right overnight, and that bugs the crap out of me. And because I'm like, oh, is that what it takes? You just wear very little. You wear very little, and then you say terrible things and just put basic conservative things on top of that, and then you're a star. It just, I hate it. But anyways, she said, politicians are just people who didn't get laid in high school and whatever, and Fauci this and Fauci that. And some things, guess what? Conservatives will agree on. That Fauci did a horrible job handling COVID. You look everything from his work to suppress the lab leak theory, his work to suppress the people who talked about natural immunity, that those who had COVID, guess what? They're less likely to, I guess, die or get sick again. And if they do, it's not as bad because they already had COVID. He tried to squish that when we said, oh, if you had COVID, go back to work, go live your life. He tried to squish natural immunity. He tried to just go after people that, talking about lockdowns and masks and all that. He handled COVID terribly. So there are things that I'll agree with Lily about. But just because you say a couple good things does not mean that then you should be able to represent conservatism. Doesn't mean you should become a right-wing star. You need to know your stuff, and you need to advocate for a good holistic worldview. So for example, I can talk about natural law. Again, we did that at the beginning of this episode where we talked about God he designed creation to function a certain way. And if you do so, humanity will flourish, society will flourish. That's called natural law. Another term for it is general revelation, the things we can know about God through nature. Then on top of that, for salvation and to handle sin, there's special or divine revelation. That's the Bible. We need the Bible. The Bible's wonderful. However, even before the Bible was put together, God had ordered creation to function a certain way. That is, again, general revelation, natural law. So I have a holistic, cohesive worldview. And it's conservative. I'm trying to conserve God's design for the world. But then you have knee-jerk reactionaries that just say basic conservative stuff that anyone could say. But for example, if they're willing to take off their clothes, if they're, particularly attractive, depending on the individual, then bam, they get subscribers, likes, clicks, make a lot of money, advertise, whatever, make the rounds in the podcasts and the various conservative networks. You have, The Blaze, Daily Wire, Fox News, all the other ones that you can throw in there, and bam, you're a star. It is annoying. It is frustrating. But anyways, that's knee-jerk reactionaries that they just say things and they get popular, but not all who are friendly are friends. Because here's what happens at the end of the day with reactionaries. If that's all you can do is react, you're never going to put forward a good worldview, a positive worldview. You can complain endlessly. You can whine endlessly, but you're not going to put forward anything productive. You're just a reactionary, and that's all you are. You're not a visionary. You're not progressive. I don't mean in the political sense. I mean, you're not progressive within the conservative worldview to put forward a healthier society. So it just bugs the ish out of me how reactionaries get so popular. But I guess putting this all together, tying it in a bow, conservative biblical Christians, not all who are friendly are friends. Remember this. You're going to have certain types of Islam that you're going to agree with aspects, but don't let them in. The reason why I talked about taqiyya, I talked about Sharia law, I talked about how all non-believers are second-class citizens at best, or lesser humans. Don't do it. It's not compatible with natural law or the fact that we're made in the image of God and that you are supposed to love people, Christian or non-Christian alike. Because God loved us, we loved others. We talked about red pill, Andrew Tate, manosphere stuff. Again, they might have certain things you like, but the underlying worldview of hedonism, of just hurting women, using women for your own gain, again, not Christian, not biblical. And then finally, avoid the bitter reactionaries. Now, that's all they got. They can tell you what they don't like. They can whine, they can complain, but they don't offer anything productive. They don't have a vision for the future. Well, I thought this was an interesting thing to talk about. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a YouTube channel and all that stuff. So like, share, subscribe. Let people know about the podcast. I greatly appreciate that. And anyways, until next time, I'll talk with you later.